Jake had no love for cats, especially the one in his home. Of course, it wasn't his cat. In fact, it was his roommate's cat, a black and white stray that he had adopted a number of years ago. But since his roommate was away for a few weeks, the cat was Jake's responsibility. Each day he fed her, changed her water, cleaned out her litter box, which far more frequently than what his roommate ever did. These were small additions to his daily routine that didn't actually require a lot of effort. No, the real effort came at night, when the cat would get lonely. It happened almost like clockwork. Around 3 a.m., he'd hear her outside his bedroom door. This constant meowing cry that would grow more intense the longer she was ignored, occasionally interrupted by the sound of her scratching, or the sound of her tiny claws scraping along the bottom of the edge of his door. Jake was allergic to cats, and preferred to keep his bedroom door closed. But whenever he heard her cries become unbearable to listen to, he'd open the door a crack, just enough to allow her to nose her way through. He'd seen her eyes glow green in the darkness right before she'd leap up onto his bed and curl up beside him. This purring lump of teeth and claws and fur. He'd wake up sneezing or covered in hives, and no amount of over-the-counter medicine seemed to help with the aftermath. But it was often better than hearing her cry all night. And so it went like this, night after night, week after week, until one morning the cat simply vanished. Jake opened a can of cat food, assuming the sound would help lure her out of hiding. But there was no response. Shrugging it off, he changed her water and cleaned out her litter box, and then headed off to work. When he returned that evening, there were still no signs of her. Her food and water and litter box remained untouched. Slightly more alarmed, but not too alarmed, because he understood that cats could be complete jerks sometimes. He poked around the small apartment. There weren't many places she could hide, and yet she still managed to find ways to disappear for stretches of time. There was still no sign of her anywhere. What would he tell his roommate when he returned? That night, Jake couldn't sleep, as he kept waiting to hear her desperate cries and pleading, scratching outside his bedroom door. But it was quiet all throughout the night. The next morning, he changed her food and water and went off to work. She had to come out eventually, he reasoned. At work, he searched the internet for advice on hiding cats. He learned that some cats hide when they're hurt or scared of dying. In a few forums, people half-jokingly posted that their cats could open portals to alternate dimensions. The larger takeaway seemed to be that this is just something that most cats do sometimes. They disappear and they return when it's convenient for them. He tried to put it out of his mind. When he returned home that night, the cat's food bowl was empty. Her water dish was bone dry. Jake breathed a sigh of relief and looked around, but still couldn't see her anywhere. He didn't bother poking around for her for long. He had lost enough sleep over her. In just a few more days, she'd be his roommate's problem again. That night, around 3 a.m., he woke up to that familiar sound. He tuned it out as he allowed himself to drift off again. A small act of defiance, refusing to cater to the flickering whims of his roommate's cat for one measly night. Tonight, her meowing cries were almost like white noise, luring him to sleep. He turned away from the door and found a cooler spot on his pillow to lay his head. The entire door suddenly shuddered against the pounding force of whatever stood on the other side. Jake was no longer asleep. He sat up and stared at his bedroom door. For a while, it remained silent, and he began to wonder if he had just imagined. He approached the door and opened it. Just a crack. And retreated to his bed with grim anticipation. For a small eternity, nothing happened. And then, a pair of nocturnal eyes glowed through the darkness. Much larger than the ones he was accustomed to seeing. The familiar purring sound was replaced with something that sounded more like growling. The creature stood up on its scrawly hind legs and looked down upon him. The cat? She had brought something back with her from whatever unknown dimension she had visited. The creature leapt onto his bed and curled up beside him. A heartbeat before long exotic teeth sank into his throat. Jake imagined it was from hell.